I usually wear two hats. One is from the political and social science, where I am researching the innovation processes around quantum technologies, and the other one from computer science, where I'm mainly researching on quantum natural language processing. And today, as we have so many fantastic speakers from the technical side, I brought the research of the other side, so the research in the area of how to steer this disruptive technology in terms of responsible research and innovation strategies with me. So I'm very happy to be here, and I will try to bore you the next 30 minutes as few as possible. So to give you a little bit of structure about what I'm trying to talk to you today is first, why responsible quantum innovation? Because you could totally say it's way too early to start talking about responsible innovation, about governance issues, about regulation. What we all don't want to do is to regulate this technology to death. And this is a huge question. Why should we? Who should? When should we? And this is what we try basically to answer first. Then I will present you a use case and tell a little bit more. Okay. Sorry. And the pathways to entanglement. So talk a little bit about the use case we started with and different ways to shape innovation. And then in the last part, I will basically try to challenge a bit the current innovation strategies for quantum technologies, which are indeed very blurry, which comes basically from the fact that most people writing these strategies and trying to work with these strategies are usually never in their life really studied quantum technologies. And this leads a little bit to a gap between actually what we want and what we need and what is out there. So all this research takes place at the Quantum Social Lab at the TUM here. And I think this is the right time to also say greetings from Professor Dr. Osgasso, who cannot be here today because he is at the Responsible Quantum Technology Conference in Stanford right now. But it is actually common research I'm presenting here. So the first question is, why do we need responsible quantum technologies now? Why do we need to think about regulation and how to introduce this now? So one problem is what we experienced during 2023 is the so-called iPhone moment of artificial intelligence with ChatGPT. So we had a comparable moment in terms of regulation. We had a comparable moment in terms of a huge movement of the regulators and innovators in terms of trying to enable more research with some structure. Wait, I think I can do this. Ta-da. Yeah. So this is what we basically did. And the result was that we had in Europe a very, very fast and developed AI Act. By the way, the AI Act is something which is developed, but it's not enforced so far. And in the United States, we had the AA Act. Very interesting what happened is that we tried to after-regulate and after-innovate a technology which was already in place. And this led to very different interpretations where we can learn from, because the AI Act, for example, is very technology open and tries to regulate the risks by risk classification. So every new technology has to be classified again when it comes into action. And we have the AA Act in the United States, which is basically reducing AI algorithms to decision-making processes. Both regulations have their up and downsides in terms of regulation. The question for quantum technologies is basically how many of these laws and regulations apply to quantum technologies. Quantum technologies as a technology which is an enabler of other technologies, a hyper technology, which is most of the time not used as a solo technology replacing other technologies, will be affected a lot by these regulations. So one reason we have to think about is that we already have regulation, innovation laws, and innovation cycles for quantum technologies in place right now, where we don't really know how they will apply. And one thing we want to avoid on one hand is basically that these regulations stop the innovation and development of quantum technologies of the second generation right now. On the other hand, Europe is at the moment highly regulating new technologies in comparison to the rest of the world. A lot of people would say we are a regulator on steroids right now. So we're trying to regulate everything in every direction for actually knowing the technology. Go on. So if we talk about like the content and what regulation and these frameworks try to do is that there are a lot of risks coming with this technology and a lot of opportunities from the social science perspectives. So one and foremost, what at least governments are afraid of are national and international security risks. This is the main topic for regulators, even if it's a little bit short thought. This is the first thing. The second is commercial risks. We have a lot of industries who are afraid of the disruptive force and power of quantum technologies replacing their technologies. On the other hand, if you talk to specifically the innovation networks, then they also admit that they don't even know the supply chain. So what they don't know is where are new chances for people already in the industry and trying basically to produce things which can be used in a quantum economy as well. So we have different ideas here. Then the disclosure of state and trade secrets is actually something where specifically the United States are already dealing with and trying to find ways against it. We have the loss of privacy. We have a very strong winner-takes-all dynamics we can already see in terms of development of these technologies. The problem is that the gaps we already have between the different countries in this world will basically even bigger and bigger. And to avoid getting these gaps as big as we can foresee it at the moment, we need to find a way to regulate as much as we need to. On the other hand, not to over-regulate, so we still have the space for developing the technology. We have challenging transformations coming up for existing businesses who are at the moment very lost in the space of new technologies, and we will have new shared economies. We also expect rapid acceleration in development of AI and LLMs, so in terms of quantum artificial intelligence and QNLP. And these are all reasons why we say, okay, these are the risks and opportunities for society from a legal, from an ethical point of view, we have to address right now. When we talk about technologies from a more social science perspective, then we try basically to categorize these technologies. And when we talk about disruptive technologies, then we are talking about technologies which may enter and expand emerging market niche, improving with time, and then ultimately attacking established products in their traditional markets. This is the very traditional definition, which is till today used most of the time when we're talking about disruptive technologies. The problem with quantum technologies, or the chance with quantum technologies, is that we will see that these technologies will probably improve, but they will not attack the established products in their traditional markets in the sense of how we see it normally in innovation cycles. So we don't expect that we have quantum technologies and quantum computers and supercomputers will vanish. That will not happen. The problem is that our ideas of how to innovate and regulate are based on these cycles. So we don't have a concept what happens if we have a technology which is more coming to improve different products, but leave the space for the traditional market for the traditional products. Specifically in computer science, you can see that if you see the different ideas about the technology in political science and social science a lot of times, then we have the idea that quantum computers will substitute traditional computers, and we all know that will not happen. This is not a realistic scenario, leading to the question how we can basically foster this innovation in terms of how can we find new frames and new frameworks to basically improve these development cycles. So the problem we're attacking here is, in a nutshell, that the traditional innovation cycles and the theories we try to steer the development and specifically the governance of these technologies is not matching anymore. So some reasons, but not all of them, is that we have a technology which play a complementary role in problem solving to classical solutions, which we're not ready for, that we have co-advancing of different technologies, which is also something theory is actually not ready for the regulators, and the non-deterministic character of the technology and the development patterns. Normally, if we see the rise of a technology, you can in a lot of cases, pretty much say where the trajectory will expand through. We don't know this with quantum technologies exactly. And we have a lot of hybrid states. So we have hybrid technologies, we have quantum-inspired solutions, and still we get eventually to the state where we have full quantum-driven solutions. Also, the distinction between these cases, that we have a fluid pattern of development, is nothing where development patterns or the steering from the political side is ready for. So all these characteristics of quantum technologies basically oppose current innovation and regulation strategies. So talking about this is basically the problem, the field where we play in. So one use case we spend a lot of time at the moment is quantum AI, because we think we need a more holistic approach, because we need to be able to adapt to different forms of quantum technology-based artificial intelligence. So at the moment, it is very unclear to which extent the different regulations will apply to quantum AI. Specifically, the AI Act would need to analyze every single quantum technology-based AI to classify if it's high risk, low risk, or middle risk, and then different regulations, innovations, and strategies apply. The interesting thing is that we already have these technologies, we already have quantum-inspired technologies, and most of them are grouped as unclear or still to group. The regulation at the moment thinks from the technology, it does not so much think about from the use case, specifically in Europe. The United States do it vice versa, thinking from how you use the technology, what are the results of technology. And we are very much concentrating on cybersecurity issues, while we basically, in terms of innovation, lack the potential for simulation, quantum machine learning, etc. It is just completely overseen and denied from the regulation, which also breaks down to, if you even see research calls, Horizon calls, it's a huge security focus. We have, I think, at the moment, at least 5 Horizon grants calling for a roadmap to cybersecure or sovereign Europe in terms of quantum technologies, instead of fostering also the broader range of these technologies. So what we basically say in our research is that we need to think more of quantum technologies as a symbiotic technology instead of a diffusing and substituting technology, and finding new frameworks basically work on this. So the idea is basically to change the view, instead of thinking innovation and regulation from the goal, because we don't know the trajectory. This is not working at the moment, because if you don't know the trajectory and you try to basically regulate or innovate the way you don't know, this is not working at all. Or from technology itself, which is also under development. One huge issue, and the most important issue, at least for the political sphere, is a lot of times sovereignty. So again, there we propose a shift in the mindset, shift in the vision from adaptation capacity to adaptation capacity instead of control. Digital sovereignty at all, is something states try, and also the European Union tries to establish by holding the technology for themselves and building technology silos. This is already not working with AI, but it will be worse with quantum technologies. Also, we cannot build all parts of these technologies, all different forms of this technology by ourselves. So the goal is basically to say, okay, we need to be able to build capacity for adoption and adaptation of our rules instead of control. Because this is also something we already see with AI where it is not working. We are not able to adapt fast enough, which leads on one hand to gaps in regulation, and on the other hand on slowing down innovation. And also, quantum technologies are specifically, and in this case also quantum computing, perceived as potentially enforcing democratization dynamics, automatically based on their current trajectory. The open source development, specifically in the States, is basically perceived as automatically bringing more democracy to technology. On the other hand, it also brings a very unforeseeable development at the moment. So at the moment, specifically regulation and innovation, big institutes use the open source community to basically have a faster development of algorithms. The problem is that there is so far no concept on basically how to enable that these are the right algorithms. And this specifically as a problem. If we basically also look at the broader scale, if we look at the international scale, then we can see that in the different policy strategies of the States, of China, of Europe, we have very different goals for this technology. While China is a lot concentrating on cybersecurity and military operations, the United States started to divide the topic by the goal. So we have a strategy for security, we have a strategy for medicine and health, we have different strategies basically for every application sector. And in Europe, we try to have a very divided strategy, which is more based on the technology itself. The basically framework I want to introduce to you, which was published at the end of 2023 in different forms, also just published in terms of guidelines 2024, is the ALSP network for quantum innovation. So the framework is a first step to basically try to create pathways and regulate upon these pathways and a little bit more fact and specifically technology-based instead, and govern this technology this way a little bit more flexible instead of having a hard governance, which is trying to force old concepts and new technologies. So the goal is to basically organize it into 3 functional categories, so safeguarding, engaging, and advancing, in terms of addressing risks, challenges, and opportunities. The focus of the framework is on the advancing part. It is not on the addressing risks part. And it is basically accounting for the technology readiness levels. Very unusual in political frameworks is that we address the different readiness levels in terms of safeguarding, how functional, how widespread they are. So in this case, each quantum domain has different readiness levels, risks, and affordances. And this should ensure for a whole network to be adaptable in different ways with the same framework for different quantum technologies. So if we talk about the first part about the innovation, then these are the 5 guidelines. It's opportunities and challenges for quantum technology, the revolutionizing of multiple fields, the redefining the interactions within the world. This is also something where, for example, the Open Quantum Institute in Switzerland is very much focusing on, which is working together with CERN, because they really much focus on the geopolitical strategies around this technology, the responsible development and use. So basically trying to establish also the United Nations sustainability goals during the development of quantum technologies, maximizing benefits and minimizing risks. So this is basically what we try to include in the innovation part of this network. If you look at safeguarding, then you see that the network is basically, the framework is trying to build a cycle. So at each unexpected step, basically, in the safeguarding cycle, you can step in and safeguard the whole process. So one very important part here for sure is the information security, but also the anticipation mitigation of risk associated with dual-use technologies. So this framework specifically takes into account that I can use the same technology in different ways. So technologies are not just dependent on how the technology itself works, but also how the technology is used and for which purpose. One of the most important parts here as well is the prevention of global arms race. So the goal in prevention of a global arms race with quantum technologies of the 2nd generation is basically focusing on the steering of the development instead of trying to prevent the people from using already existing developed technologies. So another part, very open, very important here, is stressing to have access to fundamental quantum research by promoting further open access and open source, also beyond the open source community, but also for governments, research institutes, etc. Because specifically military research, etc., as you all know, is under closure by most universities and most states. We already have in Bavaria the next step of having even more research in this area under closure, and on the other hand, forcing the universities to further cooperate for military research. And this is also a part to basically have more transparency and more research to use also this more military-based research for better purposes. Then we have the engaging principles. So these are more focusing on creating an inclusive environment for quantum R&D, addressing the values of openness, transparency, and diversity, because the investment in quantum technologies is, from an economic point of view and political economic point, very much comparable to investing in high risk, high gain technologies. Very interesting is that we can see that already the way of promoting clean energy from cases like solar energy, etc., seems to be applicable for quantum technologies as well. So the principles, the 3 principles, so in the end we have 10 principles, so we have 3 principles here in engaging, and these principles are basically to incentivize specifically to invest the money in quantum for openness, for the good, and focusing on transparency and diversity. If you compare, for example, how much was invested in the UK in quantum technologies and quantum computing in 2023, this exceeds by far, for example, the whole investment of the European Union together. This is why these incentivization models can be helpful to basically close that gap. Then we have the advancing principles, and for example, the most interesting principles for creating these pathways, because the question which is basically driving us is how can we advance these technologies in the way it is benefiting the society under seeing the legal and ethical constraints. So the advancing principles actually trying to rebuild the responsible research and innovation values proactively for quantum technologies. The European Union basically tries to employ these responsible research and innovation values. If you look a little bit more in the RRI principles, then you can read that we should develop technology in an ethical and societal beneficial way. The problem is that the level of basically application of these RRI frameworks is not happening because there is no concrete measurement for what we want to do or how we want to get this into operationalization. So what we try to do here is having a little bit more of categories, trying to get a little bit away from it should be responsible and ethical. So the societal relevance is one of them. So it is referring back to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals to basically have something like a benchmark and categories to measure this. Then the complementary innovation to basically foster cross-disciplinary innovation and encouraging alignment. You can see this even at the small level. If you look into just the Bavarian system of how we try to promote and regulate quantum technologies, then you can see that you are dealing with 4 to 6 ministries depending on the topic instead of one ministry, and they're not actually aligned in any way. Then responsibility. So the consequences specifically about across contexts, across countries, and the cumulative political divide, and the education and dialogue. So specifically education, not just in the Western rich countries where we have a lot of education systems. We alone in the European Union in the last 2 years had 50 new quantum master's programs. But if we look at the global south, then they neither have the infrastructure or education. I know this is not a very quantum alone problem, but the gap between the education in quantum technologies between the global south and the Western world, and the gap, for example, in AI, is actually comparable smaller. So we have comparable bigger gap in quantum technologies. On the other hand, our school systems in education, if you ask experts, are also not really ready for educating people for quantum. If you look at what math we teach, if you look at what physics we teach, then we're very much stuck in Newtonian and very traditional physics subjects, which is not the most helpful thing actually for quantum. The same as with math. So we can try to pull this around and say, okay, as our Western, specifically early education is also not targeted, we have a chance to basically align here and foster the education early on in early stages already in both parts of the world. Don't worry, I will not read all of them out loud. The big problem we have in general is the balance between safeguarding and advancing principles. And our current frames, and this is also why we are promoting this frame and further developing it, are having a strong favor for the safeguarding principles. So preventing from risk instead from advancing the technology and the principles. So the LSP quantum framework in this case is doing also this the other way around, and is concentrating on advancing and not concentrating on safeguarding. The number one rule we propose is like to regulate as much as we need to, but to be open as much as we can in terms of regulation and innovation. So this is a very new principle, and this is actually something you can even see just in terms of how many principles are in which category. So if we think back of the 3 categories we have, then 4 of the principles, so the 4 main principles, are the category of advancing. Then we have 3 in the principles in safeguarding and 3 principles in engaging. So the focus is very much on the advancing stage in order to have more development for quantum technologies. If we use this and look back at the current regulation and innovation programs, if we would have regulation, innovation, and actually a new shared economy which would work with these technologies, then we wouldn't need this effort. But actually what we have and what you can see is we have a German federal state strategy for quantum technologies in 2023, and we renewed it in 2024. If you compare text, then you can see that basically what changed was the 3 and the 4. So we have the 2023 strategy and the 2024 strategy, which have an overlap of around 90% in their text, because what mainly changed were numbers and investments. So what we need is a strategy which is actually seeking these pathways and probable different scenarios we can match with the benchmarks of societal and responsible innovation. The United Nations is currently discussing assigning a year 2025 as the year of quantum to unite forces to use quantum technologies for the greater good. The United States published the first overall quantum technology strategy in 2024, concentrating also on the risk of cybersecurity and their avoidance. But in this case, at least, they also announced that there will be other strategies. So current strategies are concentrating very much on blurry goals, not targeted to the ecosystem, and we need these strategies in order to prevent from basically the negative effects and risks these technologies can have. Also, something super interesting, nearly all Horizon calls at the moment ask for quantum technology roadmaps to deploy quantum technologies in Europe. The problem is that we never aligned to a goal in Europe. So the whole idea of developing and having this very either non-existent or very limiting strategies will not work. And this is why we advocate for these flexible frameworks. So pathways to entanglement was there. So we have here in our challenges and conclusions, we have the problem that these roadmaps we are at the moment publishing trying to anticipate challenges and opportunities over 25 years. But we have to get to a shorter time frame and more adaptation. We propose these quantum principles for putting shared values into R&D practice, addressing unique characteristics and complementing existing frameworks. We don't want to substitute them, but we want to sharpen them so we can actually use them. So we really say caution should be there for implementing these principles, and we foster collaboration among diverse stakeholders, because having a lot of people who never engage with quantum technologies trying to find these strategies and roadmaps will not work out. So what we say is to develop these principles, we're trying to sharpen these principles. We proposing to use dynamic graph-based algorithms for building adaptive decision strategies. So basically solving the problem of the problem using more technology and more math and technology-based solutions here. We propose to evaluate them with the help of the SDGs instead of setting the SDGs as goal itself, because these are goals we want to reach. These are measurements. These are actually not action items. And as current strategies are not offering a pathway, they're offering an ideal checkpoint-based scenario description where we can develop realistic pathways to. And we need to rethink the social science-based and political concepts for the future if we want to have a change and further develop these technologies specifically in the international competition. So yeah, that was it from my side. If you want to, that was a very run through to a lot of things we do at the Quantum Social Lab here at the TUM. If you want to know more, we have a whole, and I have to admit a little bit, confusing webpage. See it as quantum superposition everywhere. Wherever you click, you don't know where you land. But at least it's shiny and very colorful. Or you just email. We have a lot of research projects going on. Thank you for having me here, and